that we're on treaty which are steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations and Métis people today. We continue to be thankful for the partnerships with Indigenous people. So prior to calling the meeting to order, to all members of the public, if you're attending virtually and you are, please send a private message to the Secretary Treasurer and inform them of your legal name and mailing address so it can be entered into the meeting records. For those, if there's nobody in attendance, right? Please note this meeting is being recorded, and by continuing to be in the meeting, you're consenting to be recorded. Tap leave meeting to opt out and exit the session. When it's time for public comments, which I don't believe we will be accepting public comments today, this is under new business and not a statutory public meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks. All righty. So in case there's anybody here, I'm not exactly sure. The Secretary Treasurer for the Kenora Planning Advisory Committee is Melissa Shaw. And the Director of Planning and Building is Janice Bacalo. She joins us today as well. I don't think there's any other staff members on board, right?
Madam Chair, we do have Nadine Gustafson who will be taking
and
minutes on
Nadine
our
too. All righty. Oh, yes. Sorry about that. All right, so we're going to call this meeting to order and ask if there's a declaration of pecuniary interest, and if so, the general intent, a general nature of that on today's agenda. Nothing. No. And from a meeting at which a member was not in attendance.
No. Seeing none.
Okay. No adjournment requests or considerations for application for minor variance or land division, and no recommendations to council, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
And no old business, and so we're on to the new business, which is the draft planning advisory terms of reference. So Janice, I'll just let you take over.
Thank you, Tara. And thank you for all of the committee members who've taken the time to review and put together your comments on the draft terms of reference. So back in the fall, Council directed administration to do a comprehensive review of Bylaw 74/2021, which of course is the terms of reference and rules of order for PAC. This review revealed several procedural challenges as well as inconsistencies with Bylaw 77/2016, which is the city's bylaw for consent, subdivision, condominium delegation, and approval under the Planning Act. So the amendments that are going forward to council would be amendments to both of these bylaws. I was just highlighting some. The major change would be changing the Planning Advisory Committee to a committee of adjustment. So that would remove the responsibilities of PAC for doing a public hearing and providing comment to council on zoning and official plan amendments. So some of the challenges that we've had with the current process, PAC has been conducting a public hearing, but they've been doing it in the same manner as it's supposed to be an open house where the public can come and ask questions of the applicant and learn about a project and then provide their feedback to council. What we've been doing is holding a second public hearing so members of the public come, listen to the presentation, provide formal letters or speak in favor or oppose to an application, and then that information needs to be carried forward to council when the official public hearing is held the following month. It adds an extra month to the process. It doesn't really give the public an opportunity to just go and learn about a project, and it's a very formal process. And so because of this process, the staff is preparing their report to PAC without the benefit of the public input. So we're proposing to change the process so that if and when necessary, city staff would hold an traditional open house. They could speak to the public, listen to their concerns, and those concerns would go into their report when they present their report to council. It does remove one of PAC's responsibilities that they currently have. From a, council still, of course, has the responsibility of doing the official public hearing and making a decision on zoning bylaws and official plans. That's always been the case. It would be just the PAC part of it would no longer be there. So for example, we're expecting a bylaw amendment for 34 Minnesota Street. They feel they cannot proceed with that development under the current variance that PAC has granted. So that will be going forward to council for decision. That would not have to go through PAC again to have a second public hearing, and PAC would not need to make a recommendation. So that's quite a significant change. It potentially, because we're not tied to PAC's schedule, the planning department can hold the open house potentially faster. And there are some instances when we wouldn't hold a open house at all if it's not deemed to be necessary. And then so these applications could get to council faster than they do now. And it makes it easier for our staff to, if there is an open house, to include that information in our report, and we don't end up having where we have a report for PAC that was prepared without that information, and then a report for council where it's added in later and it may look like we've changed our mind. So it's awkward from a staff point of view, and we would be in a position where for whatever reason staff might have a different point of view than PAC did. So that's a major change. The other thing that came up, and this is where Bylaw 77/2016 contradicted Bylaw 74/21. Council has never delegated authority for approval of plans of subdivision and condominium to PAC. The original bylaw from 2016 delegated that authority to the city planner. This is typically, this is normal for subdivisions in other municipalities as well. The Committee of Adjustments, generally responsible for handling applications of minor variances, consent severances, and zoning matters, but not have the authority to approve or refuse draft plans of subdivision. These plans are usually larger scale developments. Sometimes they require comprehensive planning and public consultation. Sometimes they are binding the city to future upkeep of roads and things like that. And as such, it's common practice for subdivisions to be delegated to a staff member who, when particularly when a road is involved, would push forward that decision to council. So council would be the body that's binding the organization to the future upkeep of that road and such. So that is, that's the way it is now. The problem is the PAC terms of reference alluded to how PAC, not in the bylaw part, but in the terms of reference, alluded to how PAC should deal with subdivisions and condominiums. So we had you didn't have the authority to approve a plan of subdivision, but we were given direction on how to do it in case you needed that information. So this, based on our review of other jurisdictions, we felt staying with the intent of Bylaw 77/2016, holding that authority with the city planner or director of planning and building services, and of course council, would be the appropriate way to go, and just amend the PAC terms of reference to eliminate any reference to the approval of subdivisions and plans of condominium. Then there were the other major change would be to include language that clarified the procedures for the consideration of amended applications. And of course, that came out of the hearing for Minnesota Street, that the terms of reference didn't include that language. So it left us in a position where we followed the procedures that the Ontario Land Tribunal uses, and this would maintain that and have it written right into our terms of reference. There were also various housekeeping changes, wording changes, clarify, but they kept the same basic process that we use now. It was just places that, like the comments that you were raised, tweaking the wording and making sure that things are clear. And so that's kind of where we're at. We can go through and address some of the comments that you have, like going through the document from beginning to end. But if there's any question or discussion on a more general term, maybe we could start with that at your discretion, Tara.
Yeah, so first of all, I forgot to mention, sorry, everybody, that I have to leave here by 11 or by 12:50. And at that point, Renee, if the meeting's not over, Renee will take the chair. All righty. So has the committee had a chance to look at all of the comments that have come in so far?
I don't believe they were circulated, so they've come in. They've all come to Melissa, and she forwarded them to me, but I don't know that.
Yeah, they were emailed out, but just before the meeting. So I wondered if then maybe we can just go, if anybody has comments right now, but let's do it that way. So if there are comments right now, put your hand up, and then if they've been addressed already within the comments that have been received, and that's something we can talk about too. Does that sound fair? Committee? Yes, no, yeah. Okay, so anybody have a comment? So no comments or questions? Oh, Chris, okay, can I mute them, please?
Sure, I'll go first.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I went back to the questions. Just gotta go back to the terms of reference. The first one was there's no mention of a dress code, even though it's a responsibility for each of the members. I had a couple of thoughts about, we don't have a ton of perks, or I guess unwritten perks, when it comes to the committee. Just something, I don't know if it's just an administration thing, but having the honorarium payment before Christmas is kind of a nice little gesture perk, rather than, I think we receive it typically in January after Christmas. It's just a thought. I don't know if there's rules and that behind the June and December payments, but it's just a thought. Again, under the roles, I think there needs to be a rule or something in there stating that our meeting must have a chair, since it would be part of any one of our roles and responsibilities if the chair and vice chair can't attend. I think that's kind of pretty important for our roles. Another one of the roles that, again, we have that I found out after the fact is, again, or something to do, sorry, Janice?
So I'm just going to, we did make a change with regard to the chair. So it says in section, I changed the numbering to section 2.4, not 2.40, but in section 2.40, it said the chair should be appointed by committee members, and then 2.5, the vice chair shall go on, and it says the vice chair shall act in the chair's absence, assuming the chair's roles and responsibilities for any meeting or hearing. And then we added the next bullet. Should the vice chair also be unavailable for a meeting or hearing, the remaining members will appoint a chair at the onset of the meeting should they have quorum to proceed. So it's very clear that if both members, both the chair and vice chair, are absent at the start of the meeting, the first order of business would be to appoint a chair.
And the Planning Act requires that there is a chair as well, right? So we're going in accordance with the Planning Act, which I think the preamble states as well.
So
But again, yeah, I'm just saying from personal experience, since
we
coming
didn't-
on
we didn't-
board, that wasn't super clear to me as one of my roles and responsibilities was to potentially step up as a chair. And so,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's clear from the way I read it. And again, I'm okay with it, but yeah.
We did make that change to make it clear what the process was. And yes, we do require a chair to proceed.
Okay. And I think the only other note that I had was just kind of also a perk / kind of nice thing from the city is that regardless of whether we're reappointed after our 4 years, is that it'd be nice if we all did receive, it's just a standard letter saying thank you for our 4 years or whatever it is, our service. Because there have been members in the past who have served significant amount of years and didn't even get a thank you. So I don't know if we just want that to be generic because it is kind of a commitment.
It is in there. I don't know that it has always been followed, but it has always been in here that retiring members would receive a letter of appreciation on behalf of the mayor and council at the end of their term, if they're not reappointed or if they voluntarily retire from their position on the committee. So it's there. In practice, I can't speak to past practice, but certainly that the term follows council's term. So it is certainly something for us to keep in mind at the conclusion of council's term, that we would be looking at getting those letters signed by the mayor. But it's in there.
Okay, I was just thinking retirement meant, again, if you decide to leave, say midterm, or you just don't want to reapply, that's the way I understood the word retirement. I didn't understand retirement meaning the end of our 4 terms and then we're brought back on again through reapplication. That may not be seen by some members as a retirement. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
No. Yeah. So if you're brought back on, some people, you know what I mean, may not get letters because they didn't retire.
We can just
You know
add
what I-
or at
yeah.
the end of their term.
Right.
I think
Something
the intent is if the new council appointed you, you wouldn't get a letter. If you were not appointed or chose to step down for whatever reason, you would get a letter. And then if in your case you were not here and now you're back, you'll get it. You should have got a letter when you retired the first time, and you'll get another one when you were finished with the committee the second time.
Right.
So that's my interpretation of how this is.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that was all my notes.
Anybody
Thank you.
else? have
Thanks,
comments?
Chair.
Carrick? Nothing? Renee?
Not general. I would like to know from Janice those key changes that you discussed, that you highlighted. How is it reflected in the terms of reference? That wasn't clear to me.
Okay, so First and foremost, the changing the name from to the City of Kenora Committee of Adjustment and Property Standards Appeal. At the part at the front where the bylaw is appointing, is creating this committee. It is repealing the previous committee that was the PAC. It is also appointing the current membership to the new committee. And so then in the so it's in the bylaw what the delegations are, so that council delegates its consent and variance granting authority as well as property standards appeal authority to the Committee of Adjustment. So the previous bylaw would have also had language in there appointing you as a planning advisory committee, and that is no longer here.
Okay. Now I can't see, is Andrea here with us? Oh, she is. Hi, do you have comments? Nothing. Okay. So I just have a couple of questions now that have just come up again. Sorry. Something that I just realized doesn't say anywhere about is our identification that's provided by the city. That's something we should put in there, that we have when we're doing our site visits, we should carry that.
Okay, I will look into that. Do you have identification now?
Yes. We each have a card, like a credit card looking thing with our photo on it. And so actually probably the name of that's going to have to, the names of those have to be changed, but I mean, really probably doesn't have to happen until the next council.
So is that something you prepared, Melissa?
That was issued by the clerk's department to each member. So they provided us with a photograph of themselves, and the clerk's department issued us each identification cards.
Okay. So then Janice, you and I kind of talked about this briefly. What if a member goes to an open house now, if council accepts this change, and can they comment? Can they provide comment then to council as a member of the public?
I think it would have to be very clear that you were speaking as a member of the public and not as per your role on PAC. So
so you'd just say, like if you were putting it in writing, and say, I am writing this as a member of the public.
yes.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to let everybody know that too, in case that happens. That was one of my questions. All right, so there were questions and comments provided in advance. So maybe we should go through those. Janice, do you want to kind of lead that then?
Sure, I'll go. I think everyone received this email. Linda asked how about changing the name from a planning advisory committee to the Committee of Adjustment and Property Standards Appeal. I think we've discussed that already. So unless that's unclear to somebody, I'll just move on. Section 11.4. So I changed the wording of 11.4 slightly, saying debate is limited to the chair calling for discussion or questions once the matter has been presented. Members must then raise their hand to indicate they have a question or discussion. If no member indicates a need for discussion, the chair shall call for the motion as included in the planning report or as amended as per section 11.3 to be voted on. So I just added that as per section 11.3, so people will, note the previous section where it indicates how you would amend a motion. So she was asking what as amended means, and I think that makes it more clear. 12.5. This is right out of the Planning Act, where it lists the application, the things that the members of the committee would be considering when reviewing a consent application. And Robert had asked when the application is premature. My interpretation of that, and this is an interpretation of the Planning Act, would be if one of the objectives is to ensure when you're subdividing land that it's continuous expansion. You're not kind of leapfrogging and creating new nodes of. So in Kenora, you wouldn't want to be creating a subdivision where we don't have services. We don't have the ability to extend services to that without passing another huge chunk of land, that sort of thing. So it would be just taking into consideration things like that, that maybe the subdivision would be acceptable at a future date, but at this point in time, due to local circumstances, then it is premature. 13.3.
Maybe here you can just explain the difference between a deputation and then statutory public meeting.
Okay. I think the question was whether or not you could ask questions of the person making deputations, and the answer to that is yes. What this 13.3 is meant to say is there's no debate. It's not a discussion. What happens, and it's up to the chair, of course, to enforce this, but you can have an instance where someone from the public makes a statement, you might ask a question, and then it turns into a debate where other members of the public or the person making the presentation debates back and forth and challenges your argument. So you can respectfully ask questions, but it's not a general discussion. It's you've made your point. The committee can ask questions of clarification, which they can answer, but it doesn't devolve into a debate. Does that make sense?
And no one using generally a delegation, it isn't necessarily something that has anything to do with a matter that's coming up as part of the meeting. I was explaining to Janice that a number of years ago during Black Sturgeon Lake Management study days, we often would have people who would come to the committee as a delegation to provide comment. So in those cases, they can provide comment and the committee can ask questions, but there's no debate and there's no decision going to be made generally that evening either. That would be something that would have to be added to the agenda, or they would have to be added on for a statutory public meeting to be part of any decision making.
Right. So yeah, I'm just going to go back to so we in section 16 on the agenda, there is no opportunity for people to bring forward something new. So something like, I think what you're describing, Tara, if they contacted the secretary treasurer and said that they would like to present information to PAC as a delegation, then it could be added to the agenda under new business, and it would just be as council is. It would be a presentation for information, and it's not related to any file. Otherwise, they are providing a public deputation on an item that's on your agenda, and they're making their presentation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, either way, that's fine. I don't have any, now I know council, they do have deputations listed on their agenda. And that kind of thing doesn't come up as new business, so I don't know if you want to keep it sort of similar.
I think for us, we shouldn't really need to do that
I mean, right.
for the course of work that we do. I think it would be more of a one-off if something like that happened. Then we would put it on the agenda and listen to it, but there would be no debate. It would be just received as information, and you can ask questions for clarification, but because it's not a decision thing.
Right, okay. And so I just want to make sure, Melissa, you're fine with that too. You would have to explain to people that they could come on as new business, but there would be no debate. It's only for information only. Is that fine with you then?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks.
Okay, there was one for section 7.7. So Tara, this was you. So section 7.7 is the part that we added about explaining how the committee may consider an amended application for a consent or variance. And it does specify after the hearing from the public in the statutory public meeting. So if the application comes forward, it is circulated, the members of the public receive it. At that meeting, the applicant would present their project, and the planning report would be written, the planner would present their part, then you're opening this statutory public hearing, and everyone provides their feedback. So your question, I think, is what if the amendment comes in after notice, but before? I think it would still be done at the public meeting. So our department would notify the applicant that this has already been circulated, it has been being considered by PAC. If, when they make their presentation, they make a request to amend their discussion, it would follow this process. I think you would still carry on with the public hearing.
My concern was we were not given any recommendation by staff, and so I think that led to some confusion as well, and that's my main.
So with Minnesota Street, they didn't change the application until after the public hearing had concluded. So they had presented, the public hearing concluded, and the item was tabled to the next meeting. Between the two meetings, they changed the application to address some of the things that they heard at the public meeting, and that's certainly something that could happen, that after the public hearing, the applicant could request that the item be tabled and to allow them to amend their application. Once we come back after the item's been tabled and you come back at your next meeting, PAC is going to look at that change, whatever it might be, and determine if if it needs to be reposted and notification of the change needs to happen. So if the change lessens the impact and addresses the concerns of the public, then you would not need to have it reposted. But if it is a change that increases the impact of the public, then it does. So
And that's all spelled out now.
and that's spelled out. If an application comes in to our office, we have sent out the public notice and they change it, staff would look at that and say, this is a substantive change. We need to provide notice again. Or if we don't think it is a substantive change, then we can suggest to them that they change it at the floor on the meeting.
Okay. Everybody gets that, understands that now?
I just have a question, if you don't mind, through you, Madam Chair, to the Director of Planning. So Janice, do you think that maybe we should tighten up that provision and just say that the committee will determine whether the amended application addresses public concerns raised in the statutory meeting and a motion shall be passed? I just want to ensure that record captures what decision the committee made on whether or not a decision can be made, or if they want to recirculate for public notice.
I think that's wise.
Yeah, let's just flag that, Melissa, and we'll look at the wording and not try and wordsmith it here, but
Okay.
We can do that after.
The next one is just about that.
Yeah, in section 7, should there be something about closed meetings and in what circumstances they would be called? So that is covered in 7.3. It says that all of your meetings shall be open. In 7.5, it says that present. Oh, sorry, 7.4, I wrote that down. Members of the public, the applicant, blah, blah, blah. So be present during any application, decision, deliberations, with the exception of those items which may be discussed by the committee and Planning and Building Services Department in closed session in accordance with section 239 of the Municipal Act.
I missed that, sorry.
Yeah. You know, it doesn't hurt. I knew it was there and it took me a little while to find it the second time. So 11.4, I tightened up the wording on that one. So I rewrote it to say debate is limited to the chair calling for discussion questions. Once the matter has been presented, members must then raise their hand to indicate they have questions or discussion. If no member indicates a need for discussion, the chair shall call for the motion as included in the planning report, as in amended as per section 11.3. We discussed that already. Uh, 13.6. Oh, there seems to be an extra space. There was formatting errors that have been corrected, so all of the extra spaces have been removed from. should quasi judicial be defined? We don't have a section for definitions at all.
I just thought when you actually just say it's a quasi judicial committee and just do like a colon, a committee which, whatever. You know, is court, is likened to court or something like that. It's just that if people from the public are reading this, as well as, you know, new members, you need to
Mhm.
understand kind of the import, I think, of this committee. And why
So-
we have to do things the way we do them.
Um, I don't disagree. I'm not sure what section, so if you can make a note of that one, we'll see if we
Sure.
can find where.
I actually have written
Where-
it down somewhere else.
Madam Chair, through you to the Director of Planning, it's in section 2.0 roles and responsibilities where we say that they're a quasi judicial committee, so we can just put another sentence there alluding to
Perfect.
what that means.
I think OCA does define it.
Okay, the next one is 12.3.
So the committee's role here is to approve, deny, or defer. Not to transform or redesign or.
Okay, we'll take a look at that and see what we can.
Okay,
So section 19 is the role of staff. This is a little, so administrative support staff. The secretary treasurer, non-voting position, responsible for all committee administrative duties. So this is the next one is deputy secretary treasurer / minute taker. So this is a little more responsible for the recording of and distribution of minutes, records, notices, etc. to the secretary treasurer. And Tara, you asked that we include that they perform the duties of the secretary treasurer.
I'm asking if that's the intent.
Yeah, that was not the intent. Now, our lawyer may not have realized that because Nadine is taking our minutes.
Right.
I think ultimately the secretary treasurer is responsible for those minutes. So Nadine is acting more as an assistant to the secretary treasurer. I think the deputy secretary
Needs to know the legislation and all that kind of thing the same way as the secretary treasurer does, right?
Which is why we've had Tara step in as the deputy, as acting secretary treasurer.
Yeah, that makes
So,
sense. I just
I
wanted to make sure that it kind of, yeah, I didn't know if we were gonna add like minute taker or what you wanted to do there.
So I think we need to clarify that, or Nadine's going to say, "Wait a minute, this wasn't in my job description, and I don't feel comfortable with this." And certainly we've been training Tara to assume those responsibilities, so we can clarify that. So we'll look at that.
Okay, so does anybody now, we've kind of gone over it, anybody? Yeah, Renee, go ahead.
Just some very minor stuff. So section 9.0, the sentence seems a bit awkward to me. 9.40, meetings held under this provision are still be required to follow. So there must be a word missing there.
Yeah.
Are still to be required. So that was a little awkward. So I'm just going through my stuff here. Section 13.6, there are two 13.6s, so just a formatting thing or a numerical thing.
I think I changed that.
Okay.
My copy only has one.
Okay. The first sentence in 13.6, communications or petitions to be printed on an agenda shall be there was an extra D on my copy.
Yeah, it's gone.
Delivered.
It's gone now.
Okay.
I found that one.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, 14.0 on curfew. Instead of CST, I think you can just put CT, Central Time, because CST is Canadian Standard Time or whatever, Central Standard Time and Central Daylight Time, summer or winter kind of thing. So CT, I think, is the more
Can I
common.
just interrupt for 1 minute? To that point, is everybody happy with the curfew? Does it need to be a unanimous decision?
I think it needs to be unanimous.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? No? Okay. We will leave it then.
And then towards the end, especially section 17, just some line spacing issues, which was probably fixed. I don't know.
I think they've been fixed.
And I think that's it. Oh, under administrative support staff, secretary, treasurer, there's some extra spaces there somewhere.
I think that's been fixed too.
Okay, that's all I had. But in terms of content, I didn't have any issues with anything.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Chris?
Just a thought. I don't know if it needs to go in the terms of reference, but for those individuals, new members that don't really follow online discussion or Facebook groups, whether it's possible for the secretary treasurer, member of the city staff, to inform the members of the committee that the meeting could potentially go past 9 o'clock based on their experience, that type of, like I said, I know it might have helped me out a bit and way in the past, but yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to go in the terms of reference, but I see Melissa nodding. But yeah, sometimes this is a surprise to us as well. You walk into the room and there is 40 people there instead of the 2 that you were expecting. And at that point, you might anticipate there would be a timing problem. But if we know in advance, in her communications, she can certainly mention this is looks like a long agenda.
I respectfully have to leave now, so it is 12:48, and I'll just leave the chair then to Renee, and thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, Tara. Okay, so are there any other changes or that we need to discuss or consider with the are we prepared to put a motion forward, or Janice, do we need to make any further edits? Do we need to see a revised version before we put a motion to accept the changes?
I think we're ready to go to council with this. So we have committed to, unfortunately, I'm under a time constraint. It has to be in today. So we will do what we can. I think that the changes that you've asked for are not substantive. So if the committee is in general agreement with what we're presenting, then you can mention in your motion that it's
okay.
minor
Can
edits.
Melissa?
Yeah, Madam Chair, through you, I just did want to confirm that I do have a draft motion available for the staff or for the members that I can read. In advance of that, I do just have one point of clarification with the Director of Planning and Building, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay, so through you, Madam Chair, to you, Janice, just confirming if whether the approval of plans of subdivision and condominiums are still to the Director of Planning and Building Services, or if we were amending that to the city planner.
We're amending it. It's city planner now, but we're changing it to Director of Planning and Building in the absence of a city planner. So
Director of
council
Planning
would
and
have-
Building in the absence, okay.
So council would need to, I think it's, I'd have to look back at the, but we wanted to make it very clear that it was the director had that authority because we do not have a city planner.
Okay, so my apologies. It is to the Director of Planning and Building Services.
Yes.
Madam Chair, back to you if you'd like me to read that motion.
Yes, please go ahead.
That the Planning Advisory Committee, as established under bylaw 74, 2021, approves an amended terms of reference and rules of order and procedures for the City of Kenora Committee of Adjustment and Property Standards Committee, and further supports the delegation of approval of plans of subdivision and condominium to the Director of Planning and Building Services.
Okay. Is someone willing to put forward a motion to accept? Carrick and Andrea? Do we need to discuss further? No? Are we prepared? A show of hands to accept? Okay. I think
Madam-
we have approval.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee. This will form part of the Director of Planning and Building Services report to council, and we will ensure that the minutes do provide a recommendation to support those amendments to the terms of reference.
Thank you to both of you. I believe that's it for our agenda. Move to adjourn. Chris? Thank you. Then we are adjourned.
Perfect. For the minutes, that was at 12:52. Thank you.
And
Thank
I just
you.
want to put forward an expression of thanks to the staff who put all the time into the preparing that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Well done.
Absolutely. Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you, Karen.
We'll see you next month.
All right. Happy
Thank you.
Friday, everybody. Have a good weekend.